It is now time to request our chief guest, Professor Nonigopal Mohanta, sir, to kindly deliver his much-awaited valedictory address. Please, sir.
Honorable Principal of NERIE-NCERT Umiam, Shillong, Professor B. Borthakur, Professor Subhash Chandra Roy, the coordinator of this National Seminar on Integration of Indigenous Knowledge in the School Curriculum, Prospects and Challenges, Dr. Tulika Roy, the moderator of today's program, dear paper presenters, and invited guests and dear friends. At the very outset, I would like to express my deep sense of gratitude and thanks for having given me this opportunity to speak a few words in the form of valedictory lecture for this national seminar on integration of indigenous knowledge in the school curriculum, prospects and challenges. Well, I believe this is a very relevant and timely seminar being conducted and organized by NERIE-NCERT, especially because, as has already been highlighted by Dr. Roy, that indigenous knowledge system is becoming highly critical. It's not critical because NEP says, but why it has become all of a sudden important? Because NEP has given special focus on the importance of indigenous knowledge system and how to incorporate it into the school syllabi. So, in fact, to deliberate on this issue, we have about more than 90 papers, I am told, both online and offline. And I congratulate all of you, particularly NERIE-NCERT Shillong, Umiam, for having organized this seminar. Now, as all of us know, it is the NEP 2020 that gives special focus on indigenous knowledge system. Now, why this importance has to be given? Why previously adequate importance was not given to indigenous system of education is because of westernization and modernization. Well, I am not against modernization, I am not against westernization. But when we had studied history, English, or any other, even social science, actually, I'm a student of political science. So when I studied our theories, our approaches to the discipline, we are told without understanding modernization, without understanding westernization, then Riggs model, agerita, transita, industria, means if you are an agricultural economy, then you are underdeveloped. So progressively, you proceed towards from agerita to industria. That is the phase of development. And what is that phase of development we need to imitate? We need to imitate the Western model. Well, I'm not unnecessarily critic about Western model because I myself studied a lot. But having said, we talk a lot about Macaulay's, interpretation. In fact, the colonization of mind was one of the objectives of our colonial rulers, that we inject you education system in such a manner so that you may become Indian, but in your thought process you always become British or, more westernized. And even in the post-independence period, even though Gandhiji way back in 1927 talked about a very vibrant indigenous education system, which was known as Ward's scheme. In fact, water scheme was very elaborately, looked into by a committee. But this Wardha committee, Wardha education, what we are talking today was actually, to a great extent, I don't say in its totality, but Wardha scheme to a great extent talked about the outcome-based education. Today we try to move from input-based education to outcome-based education. Gandhiji talked about outcome-based education, the practicum, the vocational education. In fact, the teachers were to earn their income by selling their products. So what I mean to say is that, and in fact, he was giving importance to local knowledge system. He was giving importance to local knowledge in terms of imparting education to the children. So vocationalization, importance to local knowledge, local context, work experience. These are, and he talked about separation of religion, religious education. He was against that. Gandhiji was against religious education. Of course, at that point of time, Muslim League opposed Gandhiji. But nevertheless, what I am trying to say is that it is not that we didn't attempt for indigenization of our education system, but somehow we are so much deeply embedded, we are so deeply ingrained with the colonial mindset that we didn't pay much attention to what Gandhi and other people talked about. What I'm trying to say is that I'm not in opposition to Western education per se. We need to study Marx, we need to study other, scholars, Aristotle, Engels, whatever you talk about, Lenin, Stalin, but not to the extent that we do not know anything about our own system. I need to know Marx, I need to know Lenin, Stalin, Mao. We have studied this all. Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Marxism, Feuerbach, relative autonomy school, what not. But unfortunately, we haven't studied, Vivekananda. We haven't studied Aurobindo. We haven't studied those people who shaped the lives of Northeast India, like Shankardev, Madhavdev, and even other people, other tribal leaders. Sir Nicholas Roy from this area, who played a dominant role in the Constituent Assembly, and I urge you to look at the arguments being given by Sir Nicholas Roy in the Constituent Assembly. So while I am not against Lenin, Stalin, Marx, and other scholars, but if we do not make a convergence between this Western scholar and the Eastern scholar, then we do not understand our society. What is our context? Three things are very important: the text, context, and the subtext. Here I am talking about the context where we live in. For example, our new generation do not know about the stalwarts who played critical role in the freedom struggle. Gopinath Bardoloi, Vishnuram Medhi, all these people, and even from our Manipur, the other scholars, other stalwarts who fought against the Britishers, Tirut Singh and others. How much do we know about them? So my point is that we are colonized. We were deeply ingrained into the colonial mindset in such a manner that we didn't understand about our own context. And the result is that we tend to develop that what is there in the West is everything good, is everything hunky-dory. But that is not so. We are told the democracy that we have in the Western society is the best democracy, but that is not. I'll tell you why. Why that is not. That Western democracy is supposedly the best democracy. We have been told. In fact, when India introduced parliamentary democracy, India, lot of people, Western scholars came to India. You know why? They thought India was a snake charmer. India was what? Snake charmers. They thought a country which is communally divided, which is perhaps the most diversified nation on earth, how would they introduce democracy? Because in a democracy, what you require is that homogeneity is important. Homogeneity. Linguistic homogeneity is important. Religious homogeneity is important. If you go to Europe, if you know French, German, Spanish, or English, you would not have any problem. You will not have any problem. If you go to America, if you know French or America or Spanish, you will have no problem. So they do not deal with heterogeneity. They already think that it is the economic development would make a country democratically successful. They never thought that a country like India, which is so much divided, caste division, religious division, class division, gender differences, so much inequality. So how a country like India could, flourish in democracy? They thought maximum 10 years and India would crumble. And they were true to some extent because our neighboring countries were crumbling like house of cards. Look at Sri Lanka, look at Myanmar, look at Bangladesh, look at Pakistan. All these Asian countries are hovering from authoritarianism, democracy, totalitarianism, or even religious dictatorship. But India has not faced this kind of problem today, in spite of the prophetic doomsday, which was so-called, predicted by the Western leaders. It did not happen. And they thought diversity is anathema to democracy. What they thought? They thought that diversity is anathema to democracy. Even in Northeast India, we have about 260 ethnic groups, 185 languages. One poet said, Motok Moran aru lalung sutia, missing borahi boru kosari bhutia, mestrava singfo, dofala habung, ahung keutkus koibotta bamun, fakial hunual aruduonia, karbi misimi hari aru horonia, korita kayastho, gukhai mohanto, pomua somua sah, bonua ananto, tholua Nepali, paharia bhai, sohosti jatir milonor thai. So Northeast is agog with communities. These are some of the very few names of communities that I have talked about. Even scholar like Jyoti Prasad Agar, like Moy Khasia, Moy Jayantia, Dofala Aboroka, Moy Singfu, Bhoyamor Miri, Huon Hiria Deka. It goes on and on. What I'm trying to say is that 260 modern ethnic groups. And look at United Nations. United Nations do not have this much countries. If all these communities ask for independent state, just imagine Northeast India alone would have more than 267, nation states. So that means these people know how to live together. These people know that in spite of differences, how to live together. We may have differences. Differences is a part of human society. Contradiction is a part of human society. When I study conflict is unavoidable. Conflict to hona hi hai. Conflict will be there. But the issue is how to handle conflict, how you resolve conflict, and how the northeastern states, the communities, in spite of not having so-called democracy, are living for ages, are living for generations and generations. And that is the democratic spirit of these communities. That is what we need to incorporate in our syllabi. We don't have to learn from the Westerners how to live, how to live together. They get immensely surprised, when they see India is still functioning as a democracy. Yes, we have deficiencies, no doubt about that. In fact, this kind of education system actually has deprioritized some of the issues. For example, in the history book, I don't have any kind of malified intention to anyone without having any prejudices. I would like to tell that history books in our days, there was one chapter on Aurangzeb, there was one chapter on Babur, one chapter on Akbar, one chapter on Lodhi, one chapter on Tipu Sultan, and even insignificant Bahadur Shah Jafar also, he had one chapter. But unfortunately, there was not a chapter on northeastern states like Lachit Borphukan, Tirupat Singh. There was not a single chapter on the other Cholas, Palas dynasties. And if you go to Southeast Asia, what will you see? You will see all Indian civilization and the footprints of Indian civilization in Southeast Asia. You go to Thailand, the name of the airport is Suvarnabhumi, I think, International Airport. Then in the airport itself, you will see Garudra, you will see Indra, and the churning of the ocean. Thailand, in Malaysia, Bali, the famous tourist destination. You will see all agog with the symbols of Indian civilization. That means I haven't known. We never studied them. How our ancestors in the 10th, 11th century went to China, went to Southeast Asia, and spread the tentacles of civilization, Buddhism, Hinduism, but not imperialistic in design. These are not imperialistic design. There is no military force you will see in Thailand, Malaysia, Laos, Vietnam. In Vietnam, the Nagas are very, very important. Where these Nagas have come from? So these are all, even Malaysia, although a Muslim country, Indonesia, Garudra plays a very important, their name of the Biman, their airlines is Garudra. Even in the coin, they have the symbol of Ganesha. Ganesha plays a very important role in those Muslim countries of Malaysia and Indonesia. Now what are these? These are the symbols of civilization. But I haven't studied them in my history book. I was never told that our history, our ancestors in the 10th, 11th, 12th century was on a mission for peace, was on a mission for tranquility, was on a mission for humanity. Buddhism and Hinduism. Even today, they are spreading with all vivacity, with all vivaciousness, with all, alertness. These are moving in Southeast Asia. So what I'm trying to say is that it is high time that we develop a sense of pride. We develop sense of belonging to the system. You go to China, any amount of differences will be finished, will be, very sternly tackled with. You go to China, I talk to my university people there, right from the military, right from the bureaucracy, right from the academician, you will see in one voice. That voice being, hail to the ruling class, hail to the ruling class. But here in India, you meet with three people, you will see one is a communist, one is a centrist, one is a leftist, one is a rightist. No problem. This is democracy. What I am trying to say is that China's signification is so complete that they now want to go for one belt, one road. One belt, one road. The scheme they want to, spread the Middle Kingdom syndrome. It is called Middle Kingdom. They believe if you spread the globe, they are placed in the middle. Now they want to play the historic role of domination of the world power. The middle power syndrome it is called. So that's why they want to spread their domination across the world. So if you go to China, all people alike talk about in one voice. I'm not saying that we should talk in one voice. What I'm trying to say is that we need a nationalist discourse. We need a sense of pride, which is there in China. Even in Japan you go, the Japanese pride. The Japanese pride. They will never compromise with their etiquettes. You see the Japanese movies, how they traditionally greet each other, how they go for their, serving of foods, their customs, their rituals, they would never compromise. Even America calls it American exceptionalism. There is a concept called end of ideology. I don't know how much you are aware of the concept called end of ideology. Daniel Will says, well, ideology was there, but it ended with America. Because all kinds of development, all kinds of progress, all kinds of human thoughts, they have evolved, and after evolution, it has stopped at America. This is called American pride. They call end of ideology. End of ideology. That means, that's called American now. They call American first. American first. So what I'm trying to say is that we believe we should be like them, but today, America, the kind of racial discrimination, I was there. I'm not saying all the states are having racial discrimination, but now America, thanks to Trump, that this kind of American exceptionalism is now growing harder and harder. Mexican people are looked down upon. White supremacy is becoming critical. Gun violence. I'm not justifying, I'm not saying they're good. But what I'm trying to say is that American supremacy, they never like to be challenged by any Asians. They do not like it to be challenged by any Latino. Go to England. I have visited this place, that's why I can tell you. The UK people are with so much of ego. Their queen is the ultimate manifestation of their aristocracy. They believe it's an extremely conservative society. They do not like to compromise their tradition. Just because they speak English and they're very well developed doesn't necessarily mean that they would abandon their tradition. They would abandon their aristocracy. Queen is the essence of their, that morale, that strong determination that they have. So what I'm trying to say is that, my dear friends, we have been taught about that we are divided, that we are fragmented, that we are casteist, that we are communalist, that we are regionally polarized. Yes, we have differences. Yes, we have differences. But in spite of those differences, the crux of the argument is why this country is moving toward or remaining one. That is the crux of the matter. Maybe half of the people may be bad, but half of the people are good also. It's like, that biscuit called crackjack 50-50. So what I'm trying to say is that this new education policy is trying to, that is the kind of anecdote that I have said, that this education policy, while recognizing the regional specificities, regional, context, this NEP is trying to develop a sense of, belonging to this, one Bharat, Sarva Shrestha Bharat. But having said so, it doesn't mean that this is being done at the cost of regional aspiration. No. Regional aspirations, local context, local knowledge, local habitat, local way of life are given utmost importance, so that a trajectory becomes a circle one from below to the top. Therefore, this time is not from the top to bottom. This education policy tries to bring a sense of unity from below to the top. And that's what NEP says about knowledge of India. NEP para 4.27 says, it tries to bring about the tribal knowledge, the ethnic knowledge, indigenous, the traditional way of learning, yoga, philosophy, architecture, medicine, engineering, linguistics, philosophy, architecture, and whatnot. In fact, the Sokosti Kala, it's called the 64 Kalas. Why 64 Kalas? Krishna, all of us, know Krishna. When Krishna, he was the God. God said that there is nothing such thing that I cannot get. But still, Krishna was undergoing, educational, learning in his Guru's Gurukul system. And there he learned 64 kalas, like the warcraft, engineering, dancing, diplomacy, negotiation. All these things Krishna learned in his indoctrination with his Guru Sandipani, in his Guru system. So this new education policy tries to bring those capabilities, philosophy, yoga, architecture, medicine, engineering, linguistics, literature, sports, games, so on and so forth. Then secondly, this education policy tries to bring about the treasure, the vast resources of this country to the world. That through educational system, we need to tell the world about the vast resources that we possess. Our ethnic repository, our heritage, the tourism. Then this education policy also says this kind of cultural awareness creates a sense of creativity. You imagine most of the people who are in the rural areas, they are more creative. At least I find. I keep on visiting lot of village areas because of my responsibility as education advisor, and I find the boys and girls in the rural areas are creative because of their cultural awareness, because of their habitat understanding, because of life skill. And where does life skill come from? This is in the community itself that you learn how to live with the challenges, how to live with the kind of contradictions that you have. So this new education policy tries to give importance to the indigenous knowledge system so that this concept of holistic education, the concept of self-reliant knowledge system becomes a reality. Now, when we talk about indigenous knowledge system, we talk about here the indigenous knowledge system, the traditional knowledge, ethno-knowledge, ethno-science, our perception about the world, our views, skills, technology, our cultivation system, irrigation, soil conservation, fertility management, then weaving and house building, bamboo, woodcraft, pottery, self-sufficient economy, wide range of areas are there where we can develop our indigenous knowledge system. So what I'm trying to say is that eco-conservation, we don't need to learn from the other areas. For example, I have, our Vivekananda Kendra in Guwahati, they have recently come up with a lot of books on indigenous conservation. And I'm taking it from there. That is the Angami people, how they go for economic conservation. An interesting feature about Angami people is that a tree is never cut and uprooted completely. 2 or 3 feet of the tree trunk are usually left. Why? Often such trunk grows branches, and the growth of these branches is fast because of the strong trunk with its deep roots can spread its roots and other branches. So these are some of the conservation techniques adopted by our tribal ethnic communities. Then some other Khasis, for example, they talk about sacred groups and forest conservation. The concept of sacred groups among the Khasis is interesting so far as forest conservation is concerned. In religious context, the Khasis believe that sacred groves are the places where the spirits dwell, a spirit who look upon the activities of different life forms in natural world. And these spirits are called in different name as gods of the forest. So what I'm trying to say is that the sanctity is given to the nature, so much so that they do not allow people to violate these kinds of norms. So this kind of tradition is also there among the Nisis. These kind of traditions are there among the Karbis and the Bodus and the Missings. I do not want to go into the details. But here, I would like to draw your one attention to the traditional knowledge system of democracy, good governance, and decentralization of Northeast India, which I believe it should be included in our syllabus, particularly for our schools. Because I belong to the discipline of political science, I strongly believe that we do not have to learn democracy from the Western world. Because in this part of the world, we have developed institutions which may not test, which may not succeed in the norms of Western democracy, but they have been living or they have been sustaining for ages since time immemorial. For example, the authority, the traditional village system, the traditional institution in Arunachal Pradesh, I would like to draw your attention to. How the authority is exercised, where the authority is vested, what is the representative nature of the village council. These are some of the issues that we need to learn from the tribal institutions, more specifically from the state of Arunachal Pradesh. In Arunachal Pradesh, there are three kinds of representative domination or authorship. What are those three kinds of authority that we have in Arunachal Pradesh? Number one is the chieftaincy system. We find it among the Noktes, Wangchus, Tangsha, Singphos, and the Khamtis. So that is called chieftaincy. The second type is theocratic type of village council, and with this kind of theocratic type of village council is very much popular among the Buddhists, particularly among the Khamtis, Monpas, Serdukpen, etc. And among the Adis, they have a typical democratic village council. Adis, Miri, Apatani, Monpa. Among them, there is a very typical type of democratic village council. So what I'm trying to say is that in Arunachal, so far as democracy is concerned, when we teach democracy, we teach Western democracy. We say that democracy is by the people, for the people, of the people. But to implement in its true spirit, perhaps it is also important that we tell that various forms of local governance is there among the Arunachalis. The chieftaincy, the theocratic type of benevolent village council, and the democratic council among Adi, Hilmiri, Apatani, Monpa. So these are the three kinds of, village councils that we have only in Arunachal Pradesh. Among the Monpas, there is an institution called Mangmazos, Mangmazos. And this institution, which is very much popular among the Monpa people, it has been surviving since 11th century. This is one of the oldest institution that we have that has been operating since 11th century. It is among the Monpas. Then there is a system called Meli in Oka. Among the Okas, they have an institution called Meli. Oka society has developed a kind of democratic form of local government from chieftaincy, which was prevalent prior to independence, but now the relevance is coming down. The last vestige example of such presence was Oka Ranis. Means this Meli of Oka, it is governed by the queen. It is governed by the ladies. Generally what we find among the tribal people of Arunachal is that it is male dominated. But in certain cases, women play dominant role. So there are many such examples. Buliang among Apatani, Buliang is another such institution, which is so much a vibrant institution among the tribal. Then Kebang among the Adis. Kebang, according to Eluin, in his philosophy, in his book A Philosophy for Nefa, according to him, Kebang is known as village council. Nevertheless, this is one of the most famous institution and most effective institution in Northeast India. So what I am trying to say, my dear friends, is that these institutions, Kebang, Buliang, and other institutions among Apatani Oka, they are so much vibrant that even the governor, the then governor B.K. Nehru was governor in Arunachal Pradesh. When he was about to retire, he wrote a book called Nice Guys Finish Second. In that book, B.K. Nehru said that why do you introduce police in Arunachal Pradesh? Why? Because you have such excellent traditional village management system that you do not need police here in Arunachal Pradesh. But later on, even today I am told, police has a radius of 5 kilometers only. The rest is ruled by the traditional institutions. But having said, I am not here to eulogize everything that is tribalism. I am not here to appreciate everything about the tribal institutions and village councils. There are certain deficiencies. The deficiency being that women are not given adequate importance. And one of the scholars says, village republics represented by traditional institutions have always frozen women in a time warp and clearly demarcated their gender roles, unquote. I accept that in most of these traditional institutions, the role of women is not very dynamic. But nevertheless, with the changing facets of modernity, with the changing facets of our democracy, I believe these institutions can change and accommodate the burgeoning demand, or we can accommodate the women into the whole ruling process. So, these institutions are some of the examples. That's how we govern our democracy. So what I'm trying to say is that when we talk about democracy, democracy is not about fundamental rights only. Democracy is not about freedom of speech. It's not about only the women right or the rights that we enjoy. Of course, rights remain the most important dimension of democracy. There is no doubt about that. But along with rights, democracy is also about how we arrive at decisions, how we negotiate our differences. Does consensus play a role? How we address our differences? I'm afraid if America, if Europe used to have this magnitude of differences that we have, I just wonder how Europe or America would have fared. So democratically, we are deeply embedded in our ethos. So what I'm trying to say is that this kind of indigenous knowledge system, they tell us about the values we imbibe. And those values come from our family. Why our family is given so much importance? Because, when I say family is the harbinger of value transformation, what do I mean by that? It is because nowadays we have only single family or even DINK, double income, no kids. But in our days, our pehi, khuri, mahi, maternal aunt, paternal aunt, auntie, uncle, all these, they're not just relationship. They also epitomize our institutional values. For example, my pehi or my maternal aunt or auntie, they exhibit, they tell us about stories. They learn us, they teach us how to live life, how to negotiate our contradictions in life. But unfortunately, now what is happening is because of the popularity of DINK. DINK means double income, no kids. Or if there is a single kid, where there will be uncle? Uncle will be lost. Auntie will be lost. Peha will be lost. Maternal aunt will be lost. And once these relationships are lost, these are not just merely some individuals I am talking about. They are institutions by themselves. So what I am trying to say is that how to regenerate those values. I think these are some challenges that how to incorporate our family values. That is important. And in fact, don't believe that dil mange more kind of attitude is what will give you happiness. And in fact, believe me, I studied in Berkeley. One day what I saw was, one couple was hugging each other. The boy suddenly saw ISKCON group of persons going, chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. The boy suddenly left the girlfriend. He went along with the Hare Krishna, Hare Ram movement. And I followed the boy. It was very surprising because they were in a clinch. They were in a clinch with each other because in Western society, they express their love clearly. So I asked the boy when he stopped that you were with a girl, with your girlfriend. Why have you left her all of a sudden? He says this kind of tuning and the chanting and the Harikirtan gave him a sense of satisfaction which he could not express, which he could not articulate. So he said it was a very natural inclination that he went along. What I'm trying to say is that possessive individualism is important. You need good life. Dil mange more. Why not? It's my life. With cigarette in my hand, I felt like a man. There's no doubt about it. We need good life. But the fact is that that is not enough. That is not enough. Otherwise, why the suicide rates are increasing in such an exorbitant rate? So what I'm trying to say, the family value system is important. Environmental conservation that has been given to us by communities, we also need to include it in our syllabi. But mere incorporation is not sufficient. We also need to bring them to the communities. Mere inclusion in the syllabi will be not sufficient until and unless we expose them to the community living style. Then, these kind of societies teach you negotiation, dialogue. They teach you mediation. They teach you win-win situation, consensus, because most of these village councils, they do not come to a decision by voting. I repeat, the village councils that I have talked about, they do not come to a decision by voting. One of the important mandate of this village council is that they have to reach to a consensus. So consensus building is equally important. We are talking about dialogue. Dialoguing is not about influencing you. Dialoguing is not about your win, my loss, or my win, your loss. Dialoguing is about understanding each other, understanding each other's perspective. Negotiation, you learn from the diversity. You learn from diversity. I have one of my friends in Delhi Police Commissioner Robin Hibu. His language is not understood by his wife because in Arunachal you have more than 80 languages. And their son doesn't understand parents' language. And he speaks Tamil because the house lady happens to be Tamilian. So they are finding it extremely difficult, and that is what India is all about. So what I am trying to say is that all these aspects, diversity, multiculturalism, politism, multicultural approaches, respect for diversity. We may have differences. I may not agree with you. You may not agree with me. But doesn't not mean that I'll kill you or you will kill me. So you learn it from the treasure that you have in Northeast India, that you have from our Indian sources, Indian knowledge system. And I'm telling you, you need to be a little bit deeply rooted into your system, deeply rooted into your heritage. I'm not saying that you should accept tradition, culture uncritically. Bhupen Hazarika used to sing a very beautiful song, which is the University anthem of Guwahati University. Bhupen Hazarika says, Zilikabo luitore par, hasipate bhasha dibo, sifunge asha dibo, rongghore melibo duar, সমাজে সাবটিব মহান মানৱতা বিজ্ঞানে আনিব জোৱাৰ. Bhupen Hazarika in this song says, Hasipate bhasha dibo. Hasipat means the traditional, our written system through bark of a tree. Yeah, bark of a tree. That is tradition. That is hasipat. Yeah, that is hasipat. Hasipate bhasha dibo. Sifunge asha dibo. Sifung is a drum of missing community. Hasipate bhasha dibo, sifunge asha dibo, hasipate bhasha dibo, sifunge asha dibo. Samaje sabotibo mohan manobota means society will enlarge, will embrace humanism. Samaje sabotibo mohan manobota means ultimately aim of education is humanism. Samaje sabotibo mohan manobota. Manobota means humanism. Bigyane anibo joar. What will be the essence? Science. Scientific quest. So when we say our past, our heritage, I'm not saying everything of the past is good. Or you accept uncritically. I'm not saying. Other day I got a SMS or WhatsApp. Somebody was something orga here, and they were drawing here, and someone was saying this was Indian Wi-Fi in the traditional system. That Shiva used to, the followers of Shiva sect, they used to draw Regha. So someone says this is past Indian Wi-Fi system. So what I'm trying to say is that everything is not to be accepted uncritically. But what I'm at the same time, let us, with a free mind, look at our heritage. With a free, open mind, you look at your treasure. Look at your language. Look at your past. And then you accept it with scrutiny. And otherwise, actually, it is very important in this age of, cutthroat competition, we will not be in a position to face country like China, face country like other, like Pakistan and anybody. So with these words, my best wishes to all of you. I hope this two-day deliberations will definitely help us in framing our syllabus for the school children. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir, for your lucid presentation and the words of wisdom. But before we wind up, if there are any questions that you would like to put up before the chief guest, you are most welcome. Anyone, any comments, observations, or any questions that you have in your mind?
Good evening. I am Varunani from Tamil Nadu. When we present our paper for this seminar, we didn't have complete plan about indigenous knowledge. And we come to this seminar when in the introduction speech, our chief guest, Mr. Subba, his speech has taken away something. What is indigenous knowledge? What should we have to do? Those things we get a good idea. And in this valedictory function, we completely get to know with his speech what is indigenous knowledge, what should we take, what should we don't take, those things. And thank you for this pleasant opportunity to think back to our heritage and culture. Yes, our own culture. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sir, I have also one clarification. In your speech, you talked about homogeneity. Normally in Western societies, whether it is US or South Korea, they have one language. And also they have one type of culture. But diversity is just India's cultural mosaic. We have a mosaic of cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, religious diversity. And it is said that in many fora that diversity is our strength. Diversity is our strength, unity in diversity. So can we think of homogeneity in a country like India, in also political sphere? We have many parties. We have a different, it is said that we have a very dynamic and vibrant democracy, and the largest democracy of the world. So how homogeneity, we can say that it is can we bring in our indigenous or in our cultural or development practices? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, the online participants also can put up some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
I would like to say just a few words. Myself, Dr. Deepa Rastogi, lecturer, Department English from Ashoknagar, Madhya Pradesh. Madam, I really feel privileged and blessed to take part in this national seminar on integration of indigenous knowledge in the school curriculum, prospects and challenges, organized by NERIE-NCERT, Umayam Bhoi, Meghalaya. Madam, I would like to say that in this regard, school curriculum prospects and challenges, it's really a wonderful event to target, to come back to the roots of Indian culture and to torch a light for implementing and imposing the really primitive methods and innovative ideas to modify the new educational system in reference of NEP 2020. The rest of the part everybody has explained. I believe that I should not explain it again, but I really feel privileged and blessed to take part in a national seminar and to get a chance to get understood all the micro analytical features of implementing all the things in our educational criteria. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all.
Hello, am I audible? Yeah, thank you. What Professor Pradhan has said, in the midst of this diversity, how to generate that homogeneity in a multicultural society like us, isn't it? Well, it's a very pertinent question what Professor Pradhan has been asking, and it's a burning question for all of us. But, what India is doing, there is a civilizational actually axis which keeps this society binding. That homogeneity is coming also from a civilizational legacy. Why I have said it, because even if you look at the 13th, 14th century Assam or 15th century Assam, you will see a great, trust was on Indian civilization. Dhanya dhanya kolikal, dhanya dhanya, dhanya naratanubhal, dhanya dhanya bharata borihe. So right from the days of, 7th century, even during 7th century, Kumar Bhaskar Verma, he brought Yuan Sang. And a sense of belonging was there, the trade was there, the trade of unity was there in spite of many such differences. Even in Northeast India already we have, as I said, more than 260 ethnic groups. But you will see imprints of civilizational values right in Arunachal, right in, for example, it's all myth, Hirimba. The Hirimba trajectory, the cult is there among the Dimasa people. And even today, they celebrate Hirimba Day with lot of enthusiasm. Likewise, even Manipur tells us the stories of Babrubahan, where Arjun was killed here. So what I'm trying to say is that there are differences, but there are unifying traits of civilizational axis that helps us to keep us united. That is number one. Number two, but in today's context, if you look at the militancy, I have written a book on ULFA. The militancy that we have had is now declining. Declining not because of the popularization or whatever of Indian state, but because of thanks to globalization. These days, boys, girls, they want a good life, they want jobs, they want good education, they want, you see, one generation has in fact emerged in Nagaland which has not seen violence. Even in Manipur, the extent of violence is coming down. Assam is almost now violence free. So what I'm trying to say is that it is not that they have come out of that ideological baggage, but economic development and a realization that we are more in a beneficial position being with India than with China. So there is, slow and steady realization, and you will see northeastern people now having a lot of presence in Mumbai, in Gujarat, not to talk about Delhi, not to talk about Bangalore. So although there is certain simmering conflict, but by and large, the classical insurgency which you had during the 60s, 70s, 80s is no longer there. So this trajectory of peacefulness and the understanding of the fact that we benefit more from being a united India, I think it is, gaining ground among the people rather than a secessionist or antifugal, attitude. So this will continue till we have a relatively good economic development is essential for that. If people do not get to eat, if the people do not get sizable section, do not find their own avenues for employment, there will be critical issues. But I do not see any kind of challenges for Indian Union in the days to come. So in spite of those differences, even if you look at the poems, regional poems, they are agog with Indian values. Jyoti Prasad Agarwala, Anandji, we know what he said. Bharat Barho, Dehi Huni Jagemur Bihadatu Horho, means Bharat Barho. The very name, even in the midst of melancholy, gives me a sense of hope. This is the kind of, acceptability that we have. The simmering conflict is there, but I don't see that in the recent times there will be challenge to this trajectory. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tolika. I will be very brief. Sir, this topic was chosen because of the national education policy, which is, I believe, that the most debated, deliberated document in this country, and nothing is left to be discussed further. The concept and ideology and the direction given in the policy. So it is almost well taken and well accepted by the country. Now, to take it forward, the implementation is the next stage, and to take it further towards the implementation, this seminar was envisaged and we have conducted this seminar. The topic we took from the National Education Policy is all about the thrust area, one of the building blocks, that is the Indian knowledge system, which is focused in this National Education Policy, and that we have selected, and then we try to understand that how it can be incorporated in the school curriculum. And when I say that school curriculum, then there is a paradigm, there is a knowledge philosophy, there is a transactional philosophy of curriculum, and there is a connect between knowledge, curriculum, and the society. Now, keeping this broadly in mind, we tried to cover the different facets of this topic, and we divided it into 4 sub-themes. The first sub-theme was indigenous knowledge implying scientific and technological skills, and it was further divided into some bullet points, and under this sub-theme we got 24 papers, research papers. The second sub-theme was indigenous knowledge and language, just to capture the other facets of this broad topic, Indian knowledge system. And under this sub-theme, we got 19 papers. And the third sub-theme was indigenous knowledge and history, culture, philosophy, and polity. And again, under this sub-theme, we got 19 papers. And the last sub-theme is indigenous knowledge as a way of knowing. We find that this is one of the most important sub-themes, and under this sub-theme we got the maximum number of papers, that is 28. Initially, we got very good response from the researchers, from the brilliant minds, intellectuals of this country, from the different parts of the country, and we received 107 papers, responses initially, and that gave us a very good response to this seminar. And after scrutiny and passing through the academic committee, finally we selected 94 papers, and out of these 94 papers, 85 papers in total were presented in these 2 days in different technical sessions. Apart from this, sir, to apprise you about our seminar strategy, that we had categorically different intellectual sessions and serious intellectual engagement during these 2 days. 2 keynote speakers were there. They spoke at length on this topic, and it went on so well, very effectively it went on. And besides that, we had a panel discussion collecting scholars from the different parts of the country, and the panel discussion also went on very well, and a lot of ideas, thinking generated from the panel discussion. To sum up, some of the issues raised in this seminar is one, that the very connotation of the indigenous knowledge or the word indigenous, that is to be debated, because it was raised in the deliberation that this indigeneity has different connotations, and the different connotations should be taken into consideration when we are going to deal with this particular word. And then there was another issue, that how to document the oral tradition, oral knowledge, or oral Indian knowledge, cultural knowledge, which is embedded in the society. So which is not documented, which is not written, which is mostly oral, how to bring that thing to the document or to the curriculum. That was another issue which cropped up during the intellectual engagement. The third issue is very pertinent, and that is about language, because the world, it recognizes the dominant language, the literature written in dominant language, the literature, the knowledge embedded in dominant languages of the world, that is acknowledged and understood by the academic fraternity and the scholars. But the language which is little scattered, which is not in shape, which is not stronger, dominant in some sense, and knowledge embedded there, how to acknowledge such indigenous knowledge, Indian knowledge, that was another issue broadly cropped up during the discussion. The third thing is the epistemological part of the indigenous concept, and there is hegemony. We understood from the discussion, intellectual engagement, that there is some sort of hegemony of the epistemology of the knowledge, and technically speaking, that yes, knowledge is born contextually. We believe as a student of education that knowledge is generated, created, it is born contextually, and different contexts, different cultures, different societies, knowledge is born there in different way. And which knowledge is more important and which is less important, it is very difficult to decide. So it was an issue in the deliberation, and it's a very pertinent issue how to decide and take a call which one to pick up and which one to implement further. So that I found it very important issue. Then the one important issue is always with this indigenous knowledge, the old knowledge, the traditional knowledge, and that is the legitimization of the knowledge. In the scientific world, they believe they have a system to validate the knowledge, and that is the scientific system, and it is based on evidence. So a knowledge which is not evidence based, they do not accept. It's a cause and effect relationship. So the science has its own way to validate knowledge, but most of the knowledge we have in a country like India, a vast country like India, the oldest, one of the oldest civilization in the world, we have many things which are to be validated, how they will be validated, how they will be identified and validated and will be accepted by the rest of the world. That is one of the issues. Then the very important issue from the academic point of view, from the NCERT point of view, from the teacher-educator point of view, is how to integrate this wisdom, this chunk of wisdom embedded in our Indian society in different cultures, different geographical areas, different languages, how to integrate in the curriculum. And when I say curriculum, it means that the knowledge system, it means that the transaction, the pedagogy, it means that the assessment, it means that many teaching, learning materials associated with the transaction of this curriculum. And the entire setup of a schooling and different stages of a schooling as per the new policy. So how to integrate it is a challenge. So integration, this issue cropped up in a big way during our intellectual engagement. So these are some of the pertinent issues we could understand from the deliberations, intellectual deliberations, apart from in the discussions went on in the technical sessions, and they have put in the papers. Actually, my director wanted Professor Nani Gopal to be one of the speakers here and the chief guest here in this function. And we tried from our side the level best to get him, and finally we caught him and we got him on the valedictory session. Sir, your speech, the way you have spoken, and the points you have highlighted, you talked about the decolonization or decolonization and against the wave. You talked about the westernization, modernization, the Western model, and Frankly, you said that you are not against those things. Yes, they are also important. They could be important in some way. But the Macaulay's part, you mentioned that it continued in India, which has brushed aside the Indian wealth, the Indian wisdom in the preceding century. You talked about that Gandhi tried to bring something here to revive the Indian culture and to bring the Indian knowledge and Indian part in the education system in the Wardha committee. And rightly said, sir, it was done. But again after independence, I think that model did not work well, and it took a different shape. You have, sir, talked about the different parts of northeastern state. You have spoken that despite the diversity, there is a vibrant democracy in our country, unlike the West, where there is homogeneity in many respects in those countries, and it is easier to bring practice democracy in those countries. But a country like India, which is very, very vast and diverse in nature, maintaining a democracy is something very challenging. And even the Britishers, when they were leaving, the Westerners, they could not believe that India would sustain further and the democracy will survive here. But we proved it, and you are very right, sir. Every day we are becoming stronger and stronger in that respect. You have talked about northeastern region where more than 267 ethnic groups are there. Yes, this diversity is there. Different languages are there. This diversity is there. But you have also said that yes, it's a beauty, it's a strength, and in all these diversities there is a common thread. And you have responded to the questions also about the homogeneity, and you have mentioned that a commonness, some common thread is very much embedded, very much lying unseen, which has to be felt and which has to be understood, and which binds us together and which makes us one India, and we are proud of this India. Sir, you have enlightened, you have spoken so nicely, and bringing examples from the West, bringing examples from Arunachal, from Assam, citing many things. We are so grateful to you that you graced this occasion, you obliged us, and we are highly enlightened by your speech. Many, many thanks to you, sir, for coming and gracing this occasion. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for the formal vote of thanks and also summarizing. May I now request the House to stand for the Rashtragan.